Okay, we are now live and we are now recording. Have a great day.
Good morning, everyone. Today is July 16th, and this is a meeting of the Master Plan Committee. We are getting started at 8:39 in the morning. We'll do a roll call because we are videotaping this meeting. Andrea Wood.
She's muted.
Here. Andrea present.
Okay, thank you, Andrea. Don Hayes.
Don Hayes present.
Karen Clement.
Karen Clement, present.
And I am Kim Craven, and I'm here, and we can go ahead and start this meeting. If we wanted to jump right in with some of our general discussions, we do have a guest today, Laura Schifrin from the Planning Board. And Laura, I know you had some questions for us, so I didn't know if there's some of those that we can review for you now.
Not really. I mean, I've reviewed some of the reports, and basically my comments were going to be, I also viewed the last 3 of your meetings, and you had some questions about affordable housing. So I wanted to come on to see if you still wanted explanations for that, because I'm happy to do that. It is a confusing thought.
So that would be. So obviously at this point we've read it and done our interpretation, but in our town you have long-standing tenure in that area. So if you want to give us sort of your thought on that, I think that would be super helpful.
Do you want me to do that now?
Yeah, that'd be, yeah.
Okay. So I've been on it for many years, and for many years we've tried to get, in my mind, thinking that the Pine Ridge and Country Estates seem to be affordable for us here. And why weren't these units counted, since they were lower than other areas? So the explanation to that from the state is that affordable housing has to be determined at construction. So there was no way to go back and take something that had already been built and make it affordable housing. Because otherwise we could probably do units like that are up on Brookline, Spalding Street. There are other possibilities. And even though I tried, Kathy Rougeau tried, Chaz has tried the state, as he's our state rep, there is nothing we can do about reverting that back. Having said that, the state mandate is 10% of your housing units we're supposed to reach 10% of our housing units to be affordable housing. The only way we had a jump in that number for Townsend was through the construction of Turnpike Village on Turnpike Road. Those are, I believe it's 41 units there, and they were all counted as affordable housing. It was originally going to be a 40B, where they would have only had maybe 4 or 5 units. They were going to be for sale, would be affordable housing. The market kind of crashed before the construction began, and so the feasibility of them thinking they were going to sell during that market was not going to happen, and they changed their plan to just building affordable units. That puts them affordable for 15 years. Now, off the top of my head, I don't have the construction date, but we're at least halfway into that process, if not more. Time flies, so I can't keep track. But when we lose those, should they not, and they can decide not to be affordable after 15 years, they, the owners. So if we do lose that, we're really going to be in a setback. because right now we're around 4 point something%. We were up at 5, but lost at least 2 units, if not 3, at Copper or something like that off of Highland. That's all in the wetlands. That probably should have never been built. But at any rate, 2 of them were marketed as affordable, did not sell that way, and they went to market value. They actually didn't sell at market value because they are a lesser square foot, amenity, whatever, to everything else that's in that complex. So that's the history. Unless we get a developer. Okay, the other thing that we have that will be a staple is the senior housing. So Atwood Acres at 50 units, Townsend Woods at 36 units. They're in perpetuity as affordable, but that's our base for the town. We have one affordable home that was built with the town's cooperation, a lot of effort on housing with Habitat. And those, the residents of that house were participating in the construction of that home. So does that help a little bit? Do you have any questions about that and what's considered affordable and not?
Laura, the Coppersmith then were already built for the 15 years, so they went
No.
to market value?
No, the one that's up, I hope I may not be saying this right, but there's units off of Highland Street near Adams. That was a single home development. It actually took 7 years to be approved. And to my knowledge, only 2, there were supposed to be 4 affordable units built with the original plan. And 2 of the units at least, and I think it was only 2, but it might've been 3, have been resold. When they were resold, they had to market them first at affordable rates. They did not go for affordable, so they had to then go revert back to market value. Those are not considered affordable. We lost that in the affordable count.
So I really appreciate you giving some additional explanation, because it sort of takes the words on the paper that I read and gives it a little life to it, especially when you can point out specific units to us. You know, we're obviously familiar with our community, but what I wonder with something like that, Laura, is where we don't have a lot of opportunity to build larger developments or apartments, even with some of the changes that we're suggesting. And to know that we have affordability in our town between the apartments on Dudley Road, the Country Estates ones, Pine Ridge, you know, where I don't understand how we can ever catch up, so to speak, or get to that 10%.
Well, it's mandated by the state, so we won't have an option of what they're going to require us to do. I think part of our plan, which is why we have to have a housing production plan each year, has to show where our efforts are, what our future thinking is, you know, and the state looks at that and says, okay, well, they're being proactive. I'll give you another example where you can have an affordable housing unit. So there was a house on Warren Road that had an in-law, quote unquote, in-law apartment. It was a relative that lived in that apartment for however many years, and the person passed away. The owner of the home wanted to rent the unit. And I forget how this works exactly, but I guess she went to zoning, and zoning told her to go to housing. And so we said to her that she could easily make that an affordable unit if she wants to, because, but the thing is, when you do that, it's attached to your home for 15 years. It's part of your deed. She ultimately did not do that. The thing about it being okay to do that in Townsend, not only are you adding to the affordable unit count, but we are in Middlesex County. So the rental rates for Middlesex County are higher than other, let's say Fitchburg, because that's Worcester County. So I'll just go to the next county and say that. So people who are renting are really not losing income if they make their attached unit affordable. That ultimately did not happen there, but that is a way of getting affordable units. And I'm sure that you all know by now that the Housing Authority has been working for at least since we opened Townsend Woods on another project. So, and we do have some people in town who are interested in working again to build another affordable unit, like either, Townsend Woods or Atwood Acres. So we're likely, hopefully, to add 36 to 50 units coming up. That's the background of what Housing Authority has been talking about for years now. We've looked at different places to do that. Obviously, Dudley Road is still viable, and we're working on that. And having established the Affordable Housing Trust, which can now receive donations of land, money, that's going to be another avenue for the town in the future. So we do have, and we still have plenty of land in town that could be developed if somebody wanted to. It's not that we don't have the land.
Great. It was first. Let me note for people that might view the meeting later. The 7283 number that joined is me. I took myself off of computer audio and I joined by phone. So not another planning board member or anything that has to be noted. So I think, Laura, where I get a little stuck. So like Turnpike Village, it has a shelf life and they'll come off of that percentage. And so that's what I'm saying, like in perpetuity, if something comes online, but it's only 15 years, we don't have an unlimited amount of land. We have land, but if we're continuing to go in that cycle where we lose our units, what happens with that? And then my next question, if another facility goes in on Dudley Road, would it be affordable with age restrictions or no age restrictions? And second part of that question, would it stay in perpetuity as Atwood and Townsend Woods will?
Okay, so anything that the Housing Authority is involved in building will be in perpetuity. So Atwood Acres is in perpetuity. That was a HUD 202 funded, as well as Townsend Woods. So those units, 86 units, are in perpetuity. The Habitat House, I'm not sure how to answer that because I'm not familiar with the deed on that property. And then, but I do know that was the case. It is the case for Turnpike Village. It is a 15-year restriction on your deed. You can, and somebody else can carry over that restriction. It can be sold to somebody with that restriction, and that person could then, I believe, say they bought it in year 3 or 4 or 5, I believe once it's transferred, it becomes another 15-year. So in the new deed, the new person has signed on for 15 years.
Okay. Now, do you know the building that will replace the one that was lost in the fire at Pine Ridge? Will those go in as affordable?
He would have to apply for that. That's a good question. That's a really good question. All I remember was his remarks at the planning board meeting, or some meeting, I can't remember when, and I'm not sure it's even a video then because we were not meeting Zoom, was that he was changing the plan of he was not rebuilding what was there as it was. He was changing the plan, his words, not mine, to bring in better clientele. So I'm not sure what that building is going to look like, but even if he stayed at, sorry about that, rental pricing here in town, which is Middlesex County, he could make that building affordable. And you have to know the setup of that building too. Like, does he own all the units in that building? There's 120 units at Pine Ridge. So
Yeah,
what I'm saying is, I think because it's a condominium, all the owners of the condominium would have to sign off. It wouldn't just be that 30-unit building.
Okay, so that's good, because I was thinking, back to the fire, that those units were all his units. They weren't like some of the other buildings that has some other owners within the complex.
Okay.
So those particular ones were, yeah, those particular ones all were his. But so what you're saying is the rest of the condo owners would have to agree to that because it's one property. Pine Ridge is one entity.
Right.
Okay.
Because they only have, and I believe because it's a change that drastic, it would be 100%. If it was just a bylaw change, there are some bylaw changes that are 50%, but when you're changing anything in the master deed, it's 75% or more.
Okay.
If you're changing an amenity, adding amenity, or in that case, he was going to reduce the number of the units in his new plan. So where it reduces the number of units, it reduces part of the master deed and plan for when that condominium was set up. That may take 100% vote of all your.
I remember some of the discussions, like the hallways were going to be wider, some structural changes, and I think, like you said, moving from fewer one-bedroom units to some larger units. And again, that's by memory, and like you said, I don't even know if those were taped. I just remember bits and pieces of some meetings. And you're right, because the voting piece of that, if units are reduced, it would change the ratio of condo fees for plowing and upkeep and all of that. So that would be complex. I might give him a call and just see if there's any plans for that so we can note it.
Yeah.
And what I'm thinking, Laura, is that we talked a lot this morning, and you might even have more info to share, but I'm thinking that when you read the housing unit chapter that we sent over, maybe just write a note to us, like include discussion from 716 here. I'm taking notes. I'll rewatch the tape, but I think there's some new information that we should add into that section.
Okay. My other comment.
We learned some new today.
So I've looked at, I know I asked you how many people were in the survey. You said 500 and something. I did get a document from somewhere that said 3 something. And one of the documents that you had a response of 247. So there's a lot of variances in just how many took the survey and what was responded to. And in looking at, I found the water department draft interesting, and I had a question on that, but I don't know if it's a question for you or for the commissioner of the water department. I think what the planning board is going to be looking for is not only the chapters that they're going to review, but they also want the comments from the department heads that those, or the boards that those chapters refer to, like housing. So just so that you know, the Housing Authority is going to meet on the 22nd, and they are going to review the chapter that you have drafted.
Okay, that's great. That speeds it up, because I was thinking that we would do planning board and then send with planning board comments around to everybody, but that's fine if we'll get them integrated. But let me just ask Don, off the top of your head, Don, do you remember the total?
I think
I might.
yeah, it's kind of like I'd have to go back and look. I think the 526 was the total number that came in, and the 329 might have been the completed and not abandoned, because we had some people that would skip questions in some sections, and so I'd have to go back and look at it. But it's kind of like, but all of the numbers sort of
Yeah.
make sense, because
And
somebody.
I think you're spot on, Don, is that the larger number, Laura, is the total that were started. And then each question, to your question of how we got the percentages, it's done on each question. So each question, let's use small numbers because it's easier. Say 100 started, and 50 answered every question. So the 50 questions that were answered by everybody, or those 50 would get counted for every question. But if someone only answered 30 of the questions, their survey would only count on those 30.
I understand that.
So we're not taking, yeah, so it's based on each question. And that's why total numbers for each question can vary. Every single question could have a different number, but it's the way that they did the percentages was to, account for that variance.
Okay. I just found that interesting. So there must have been like 247 was the 100% of,
Yeah,
that did 100%, let's say. Okay.
That sounds about right.
Okay. So I have one question on the water department report, if you know the answer, okay? They gave in the first, second, third, fourth paragraph, middle way down, classification, where it talks about the classification of 0 to 5, 5 being the worst, respectively. This means any changes developmentally that would further reduce those categories must be observed. To impair, but wait a minute, that's not the. It said something about that that the water quality was still excellent, and I was wondering, with that rating of 5 being the worst, and Townsend rates on average are 4 and 3 respectively. I was confused by us being closer to the worst number and average than the best number. So how we were still excellent.
So I can't answer that.
Okay.
And I'm not sure that Karen can answer that, but let me delve into this a little bit with the committee, because we have a decision point, and I think the decision point will help us get that answered. The water chapter has been the most difficult because it's one that those of us that are present here today don't have an area of, expertise or working on anything. So it's not, and I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination, but for some of the stuff around housing and zoning, because of being on the planning board, granted it was a long time ago, like I can navigate the chapters. And so I can kind of put myself back into that perspective of like, okay, kind of what happens for the planning board? What things do they look at? Things about economic development, because Bill and I really delved into that and did a lot of external research and all that. Like we felt okay. Karen tried to help with the water to try to move this chapter along. But right now we're at a standstill. The purpose of the meeting today was to take what you had read. I had gone through, because my job is to make sure that once everybody reviews it and the changes get made, that the language is the same. Just everybody has a little bit of a different writing style, to just kind of meld those together. And then we had the maps to integrate and some survey information. Now, I can look at that survey information, Laura, and understand, okay, I understand what the survey says, but what does that mean to the water department and how the water department can use that information? So we're at a bit of a loss. And so for the members of the master plan committee that are here today, I'm thinking about like, what do we do with this? And so I'm thinking of sending the section over with the maps and the survey to the Board of Water Commissioners. Now, Todd is the chair of the Board of Water Commission, so it's going to go back to him anyhow.
Mhm.
But to just say, this is what's in there, and just like a question like yours, Laura, like put this into terms that we understand, because if we're looking at a rating scale and something's a 3, in my mind, that doesn't fall into excellent, that falls into average if the rating scale is 5.
Right.
The 4, we can say, it's higher up there, but.
Okay.
So what do you guys, for the master plan committee members, what do you guys think about that plan? Or what are your thoughts on what we can do with this chapter to get it to be usable for the plan that we're developing?
Kim, did Todd finally send you the update information that we couldn't get into?
Yes, and I thought I sent that to everyone last night.
Dawn, did you see it?
I did see it.
Good, okay, I missed it then, I'm sorry.
It came in about 6:49 or so.
Yeah. That sounds right about the right time. And so what I explained in that email is that, it doesn't have the maps, it doesn't have the survey information, it doesn't have the core recommendations. And I certainly don't have any knowledge in that area whatsoever to try to bring that to conclusion. Now I can change the writing style and make that consistent, but the other information that is in there is just way out of my wheelhouse.
Kim,
Yes.
if I may, I think that what we're going to be looking at the planning board is not only how this has been written, but I think we're going to want the input from the departments that chapter relates to. So I think the quicker that we see responses from them, I'm not telling you what to do by any means, but I know that those are questions that I had. So I can't, as a planning board member, I can't say, oh, this sounds good or this doesn't sound good, because I'm not the expert in that department. I might be able to do that about housing, but not about all the others. So if we can get feedback, it would just save time. If we could get feedback from those departments as the planning board is reviewing them, we could get back to MRPC quicker. And so, I was on the meeting last night, and I did email them before the meeting last night with MRPC to find out just what the process was, on their end. And I know that they're looking for it. They're looking for it, I thought she said the end of July. So
Yeah,
our last planning board meeting is the 26th. So obviously we would want as much information for that meeting to be able to discuss everything with all the knowledge, with knowing how the departments feel about it as well before we send it off to MRPC.
right. And the hope was for water in particular, was that with Todd being on master plan committee and being on water, that this would actually be a really solid chapter, because he would have the insight on what's happening at Board of Water Commissioners and the report that they had done, and each project. But so it sounds like my gut instinct on just sending it to the entire board, so that everyone's aware of kind of where we're stuck with this one, is probably the best route to go.
That happened with this,
So-
with the zoning review as well. Did that go through zoning, and did they give you any feedback?
No, we have to, yeah, we've got to send that over to them as well.
Okay.
But I don't think, not that it's not complicated, but I think it's, when we read and we do the zoning, we can understand what all of the pieces mean. That might not be agreeable to everybody,
Right.
but it's in layman's terms enough that, every term is understandable. And like I said, people might not like a suggestion or a recommendation, but
Right.
it's not like trying to understand a scale that we have no idea what that scale is based on. Like that, the water department one. So, Don, Karen, Andrea, are you okay with that path? And I think, Karen, I might ask you if you would help facilitate that, kind of getting it over to water.
Well, yeah, I can send it to the water commissioner at this point.
Okay.
And now, what are the other, can I just, for the record for this meeting, now you need to send to zoning, housing, and water, obviously. What other boards or commissions or departments need to review in what sections? So we know what you'll be sending out and requesting to have it back before the 26th, so it doesn't give them a whole lot of time.
Well, whatever you
Yeah.
have, Kim can determine that. I think if each chapter, if she knows what department that chapter would fall under, and I would just get it to all the departments as soon as you could, and
Yeah.
you'll still have a whole week before planning meets. So
I would think though that, well, with the exception of water, my thought, which can be a faulty thought process, we can change it, was to get all the comments in from planning board. So after our meeting on the 26th, everything with any changes or comments that we've gotten back on other chapters from Beth, the whole package would then go to planning board and say, this is what we've got. And then I would, at the same time, I have no idea what they're doing with department head meetings, but then I would think that, a whole department head review, highway would be affected. If it's water related, the fire department is, included in that. I mean, I would think that getting it in front of all department heads at a department head meeting, send it out and send it as a department head meeting, but I have no idea what's even happening with department head meetings at this point.
I was just giving you my opinion, and what I've heard from one other, member is that it may save us time in the long run if we could get the feeling of the department heads as we review it.
At the same time.
Knowing that they would be, well, department heads, boards, the department head should be sending this to whoever the elected officials are, or appointed officials, whatever chapter you'll be referring to. And that they have
Okay.
that they give input, because that that's the people that are going to be implementing, the
Sure.
master plan. They should be on the same page. If there's something if they can bring something to light because they have more experience in what they're doing than what let's say the planning board does, then the planning board would like that feedback before they
Okay.
make a decision for.
Before they do the final one. That's fine. And we can ask Beth to help facilitate that because she would have the email list to get to all department heads and boards and commissions. So I can ask Beth to do that. And I think we need some parameters and perspectives, is sort of asking them for a general review. And if there's any major projects, that they would like to include, and that their role is not to agree or disagree with the recommendations, but to add additional information, right? Because they might not like a recommendation, but it's still a recommendation out of master plan committee.
Which a lot of times is
Correct.
survey.
Yeah. Okay.
The problem that comes in is I think that everybody's volunteers and we should all be agreeing to disagree because everybody has a different perspective.
Yeah.
When you're listening to what other people, we have to keep an open mind and listen. And sometimes when that happens and you agree to disagree, you come up with something else. So that may be agreeable to everybody or somebody didn't think of before. So that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and I think we can figure out the wording that, if they see a limiting factor for something, they might be able to add that. But it's sort of like with my regular work, when I'm doing an organizational assessment of a department, we can make a recommendation that a client doesn't like the recommendation. They don't have to adopt it, but if it's something that we observe, we wouldn't take it out. We would leave it in there and they would have the option not to execute. Does that make some sense?
Now, would you be adding, I'm thinking just off the top of my head, conservation would have to review it, recreation would review it. You mentioned the highway department. Fire.
I think that that's to just send it to everybody, every department head.
Sounds good. All right.
Yeah, I just think that's easier because, there's something in one chapter that could get a thought for somebody else, a recreation lens or senior center lens or the library lens on something that we're doing. You never know how inaction one area will affect another department. So.
All
I
right.
agree, Tim, because at least you're giving them the opportunity. You're giving them the opportunity. If they take it, fine. If they don't, hey, you put it out there, okay?
All right. So you'll request them to have it back to you by the 23rd. So planning board would have the information for the 26th. Does that sound right?
Yeah, so that might be a little tough just because our meeting on the 26th was to gather and pull stuff together, but I'll pull the different chapters that we have, make sure that Beth has the ones that we want to operate off of. And I will not get to do that today, so I'll have to do that Monday. So that's the 16th, 19th.
Right.
And so if she gets it out on the 20th, yeah, I guess that's reasonable, asking them to get it back by the 26th.
Well, the 23rd, because the 26th is the meeting.
Okay,
The more
that's a pretty
time you
short
give
turnaround.
people, the more time they'll take.
Right, right.
Yes. Okay. Okay. And we don't have to send it to them because they helped write it. is the Historic Society, but they helped write their chapter. You know, they reviewed it early on, so. All right, any other thoughts along that? Okay. All right, so Lori, thanks for joining and shedding some light on that. Like I said, that will invoke a little bit of different language in the housing chapter. I think you gave us a little bit of information that will be reflective for folks. So we'll get that added in. And then for our committee, we will meet again on the 26th. And I'll get with Beth on Monday. Anyone have anything else?
I just wanted to mention it, or how it's going to go. So we're going to get the chapters out. Are they going to be in the Word documents that you send out, and then you're expecting input back with changes to the Word documents?
Yeah.
Okay, just to that point, and I didn't get a chance, excuse me, a chance to email. Do you have full Microsoft Office Professional loaded? There's a utility called Compare that helps you compare and highlight
Compare,
the
yeah.
difference between two files. I don't know if you've used it before.
Yes, I do use.
Okay. I just thought it was going to be helpful to identify when changes are coming in from multiple sources, because
Yeah.
we're now talking about sending it out in parallel rather than serial.
Right, and that's, I tend to do serial because it is easier to track and kind of see who's doing what, but I don't mind doing it in parallel.
Okay.
If I thought that 30 people were going to comment on it, I'd be more worried.
Okay, yeah.
But I think there'll be limited comments, and there'll be, you know, highway probably won't comment on housing, and
Right.
recreation might not comment on anything except for recreation and open space. Except for if they looked at housing and a housing production plan, they might say, you know, that cost factors and, you know, changes to their operations might be impacted. There might be small comments like that, but I don't think that there'll be so many comments on each chapter that it will be horrible. But yes, I do use the Office Professional.
Yeah.
So I don't know how we end a meeting without Bill. So maybe I'll delegate
So I will
that
take
motion
Bill's,
to you today.
yeah.
Sounds like he's taken over the role here.
I will, make a motion that we adjourn at 9:21 a.m.
Second the motion.
Okay, thanks, Andrea. All members in favor?
Aye.
Don Hayes, aye.
Andrea Wood, aye.
Kim Craven, aye. Thank you again, Lori, for joining. Thank you, Hartley, for helping us get the meeting online. We'll see you all on the 26th. Have a great weekend.